500 Parisians killed or injured this month in a Muslim terrorist attack. So the world's leaders meet there to talk about the weather. It's November 30th, and you're watching the Ezra Levant Show.
Why should others go to jail when you're the biggest carbon consumer I know?
There's 8,500 customers here, and you won't give them an answer.
You come here once a year with a sign, and you feel morally superior.
The only thing I have to say to the government about why I publish it is because it's my bloody right to do so.
So the Paris Global Warming Conference is underway. It's probably the single largest collection of private jets and luxury limos on the planet right now, because they care so very much about Mother Earth. The proper name for the Global Warming Conference is COP21, the 21st Conference of the Parties, as in this is the 21st time they've got together for their annual 5-star gala. Imagine that, you get to travel first class to a different city every year to reconnect with all your old buddies, try out new restaurants, go to new tourist excursions, and all of it paid by somebody else. A vacation, a schmooze festival, but you get to say you're saving the world, and someone else pays the bill. All the most amazing tourist cities seem to be chosen. Milan, Bali, Cancun, Marrakesh. The whole thing got started in Rio de Janeiro, of course. They were in Lima, Peru last year. It is a movable feast for 40 to 50,000 of the world's luckiest politicians, bureaucrats, diplomats, lobbyists, and journalists. And there's a lot of blur between those groups, don't you think? Many journalists covering politics are really just social justice warriors embedded within the media. They go into full-out campaign mode during these global warming festivals. It's not even all the free stuff they get, the parties, the gift bags, and of course the luxury travel. It's they ideologically agree. Not that they should stop using carbon-based fuels. I mean, carbon is one of the most common elements in the world. It's number 6 on the periodic table. It's what most rocks are made of, trees are made of. It's what we as people are made of. It's part of our lives. Think of the words carburetor, carbohydrate, carbonated water. Carbon is us. It's literally as crazy to be anti-carbon as it would be to be anti-hydrogen or anti-oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide. Plants breathe it in for photosynthesis. All life on Earth would die without it. No one actually believes in using less carbon dioxide. Certainly no one who jets to Paris in the winter. Certainly no one who lives in mansions, plural, like Al Gore, or who has 4 houses like David Suzuki does. They're all just going along with a verbal trick to justify taxes and regulations in the name of their carbon dioxide superstition. No one actually believes in reducing carbon in their lives. No one believes we can. But everyone believes in using it as a master excuse for telling you what to do and how to live. I mentioned the blurring between journalism and advocacy. Here's just one example. Here's the CBC in full propaganda mode. What will our climate be like in the year 2050? Watch Weather Gone Wild at CBC News. Yeah, Weather Gone Wild, because that's how objective news reporters talks. Weather Gone Wild. I mean, it's just one step up from that silly sci-fi movie, Sharknado. But hey, got to keep beating the drum. Forget the fact that recent decades have actually had the least wild weather, least number of hurricanes to make landfall in North America, least number of tornadoes. And forget the absurd attempt to link weather events to global warming, and then to link global warming to carbon dioxide, and link that to human emissions. Look, they're just going to run Sharknado on CBC News. Global warming science has long ago been repudiated. In 2009, thousands of emails and other internal confidential documents from one of the world's leading global warming research universities, the Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, revealed a massive coordinated effort by global warming advocates and scientists to tweak and torture the data to make it fit the theory of man-made global warming. Those emails were leaked and then uploaded to the internet in a scandal that became known as ClimateGate. One email by a senior scientist, Kevin Trenberth, wrote, "The fact is that we can't account for the lack of warming at the moment, and it is a travesty that we can't." Another scientist, Phil Jones, said that they had to, quote, hide the decline. They were talking about the inconvenient fact that, look, there has been a long period with no measurable global warming. Normally, scientists test their theories against observable facts in the world. And if the facts don't support the theory, you change the theory. That's the scientific method. But with global warming, there is so much money at stake, billions of dollars, It's available to scientists, but only if they support the party line. So what you had here were scientists desperately trying to contort the facts to suit a discredited theory. And real scientists were so disgusted with this that when they saw it, they leaked the proof of it. But the world shrugged. I mean, who would care? Other global warming scientists on the take as well? The media, who were the chief cheerleaders? Sometimes not just cheerleaders. We showed you the other day that the Toronto Star, just for one example, has a contract with the global warming lobby group called the Tides Foundation, by which the Toronto Star agrees to publish global warming stories as, quote, news. It would be a shocking conflict of interest, a scandal if the shoe were on the other foot, if oil companies were paying to rig the science, if oil companies were paying newspapers to write press releases as news. ClimateGate is a fact, but it's a fact the media party chooses to ignore every day. One more fact, though facts really aren't important anymore, are they? Nature Climate Change, the climate change imprint of the reputable science magazine called Nature, did something surprisingly science-y. They looked at 117 different climate models and predictions by these government-funded global warming scientists and checked them against reality. See, that's the thing about making projections for 20 years. 20 years of predictions, you can look back in hindsight and say, all right, well, who got their predictions right and who got them wrong? Nature Climate Change found that of 117 official climate models predicting warming, 114 of them were wrong. They predicted too much warming. 3 of the predictions were right. They were accurate. And not a single global warming model predicted things wrong on the other direction. Not a single scientist out of 117 predicted that things would be colder than they were. I'm sorry, that is not random. 117 studies, 114 exaggerate warming, 3 are accurate and none are too low. That's just pay for play. That's just politics. Which brings us to today and Paris. There isn't really even any science anymore. There's no demand for science. No one even checks anymore. Low information journalists, low information politicians simply parrot the phrase, everyone agrees, the science is settled, 97% of scientists agree. What does that even mean? Agree on what? That the globe is warming? Well, I mean, the globe is emerging from a little ice age, but do they agree that it's related to carbon dioxide? That human emissions caused it, that we can stop it, that taxes work to stop it, 90% of whom said when. And as a parent, I can report that all of this is being taught at the schools, even preschools, as basic truths. It is a total cultural brainwash. I just show you a chart proving that 97% of climate modelers got it wrong, but really, does it even matter? When it's all a sham, just everyone agreeing to global warming as a rhetorical trick to shut people up, to get approval for tax hikes and regulations. In Paris today, Justin Trudeau said the science is settled.
Canada can do more to address the global problem represented by climate change. And we will do that. We will do it because the science is unquestionable.
Do you think Justin Trudeau knows science? Do you think he understands weather and climatology and carbon dioxide and the role of sunspots? I mean, this is a guy who says things like he'll grow the economy from the heart out. The budgets will balance themselves. He's the guy who called decimals decibels or the other way around. Again, it's not really about science. It's an excuse to tax and regulate, and in his case, to give billions of dollars in subsidies to liberal insiders. Remember, Trudeau's right-hand man is Gerald Butts, the former president of the World Wildlife Fund Canada, the eco-extremists who invented Earth Hour, when we're supposed to sit in the cold and dark and get used to energy poverty. They actually believe in that kind of thing. They believe in getting off carbon as an ideological thing, a religious thing almost. Here, listen to Gerald Butts talk about building an entire Marxist alternative, a utopian world with no fossil fuel energy.
The real alternative is not an alternative route, it's an alternative economy.
He's a utopian Marxist, but this is also a capitalist opportunity for connected insiders. Gerald Butts was former Ontario Premier Dalton McGuinty's right-hand man when he brought in the Green Energy Act. That didn't just abolish cheap, clean, reliable coal in Ontario. It allowed political insiders like Mike Crawley, a senior Liberal Party executive, to get massive contracts for wind turbines at above market rates for electricity. So killing private sector energy subsidizing friends in the green energy business, and raising taxes and increasing government all at once. Rachel Notley, she's no different. She just jacked up taxes on the province by $3 billion in Alberta in the name of carbon. I mean, whatever it takes. Not one single journalist asked Notley how many degrees colder the world will be because of her taxes, because that would mean talking about facts, and this isn't about facts, it's about feelings, it's about taxes and regulation and telling the government telling you how to live, which is why everyone from the media to teachers' unions to politicians love it. Last quote, perhaps the stupidest of all.
I will be joining President Hollande and world leaders in Paris for the Global Climate Conference. What a powerful rebuke to the terrorists it will be.
Yeah, no, the Islamic State terrorists aren't a world meeting about global warming. They're laughing about that. They're incredulous about the West's powers of self-deception and self-distraction. What's truly grotesque is the lengths Obama, Trudeau, and even French President Francois Hollande will go to avoid dealing with terrorism, the true threat of the ages. But that's a story for another day. Stay with us. You're watching the Ezra Levant Show.
Looking for the perfect gift? Did you know the Rebel.media has a store? Make a statement with a t-shirt. Have your morning coffee in a Fearless Travel coffee mug. There's even an Ezra Levant bobblehead. It's a one-stop shop for the perfect gift. And don't forget to pick up something for yourself. Go to therebel.media/store to find out more.
Hello and welcome back. Well, we talk a lot about the Syrian migrants, but Quebec is a whole different world. A lot of these Syrian migrants are destined for Quebec, as other Muslims have who come from French-speaking parts of North Africa. And Quebec is about 10 years further down the road from the rest of Canada in dealing with what they call reasonable accommodation. How far should our secular society go to accommodate Sharia law, to accommodate niqabs? Well, joining us now via Skype from Quebec City is our old friend Eric Duhaime. He is a radio host on the leading channel in Quebec City, FM 93 FM, and I am delighted to talk to him again. Eric, welcome to the Rebel.media. It's good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Ezra. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Now, here in English Canada, I think that we're a little bit more politically correct than you are in Quebec on this issue, and we're a little bit more naive because we have not been dealing with these issues as long as Quebec has. Can you give me a reading of the pulse of Quebec? For example, your provincial assembly has had votes on migrants and niqabs and things like that, that here in English Canada, people would say, oh, that's racist, that's xenophobic. But in fact, all parties in Quebec seem to have some common ground. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's the Quebec view on mass Muslim migration and Sharia law?
I think that honestly, the politicians here in Quebec are just following the lead of the public opinion. The people are much more concerned. Actually, when you looked at the polls last week regarding the Syrian migrants, 60% of Quebecers oppose the fact that they're coming, the 5,000 people coming in over the next few weeks. Quebecers are a little bit more suspicious about it, and our political establishment has to be a little bit more sensitive and sensible when they're dealing with those matters, because the population is not ready. As you said, as you rightly pointed out, we have much more Arab Muslim people in Quebec because of our immigration policies. And currently there's a lot of frictions, a lot of problems with the reasonable accommodations. And for example, last week, a lot of people were very shocked and concerned about the fact that currently our tax dollars are used to build a mosque at the Canadian base in Valcartier here in Quebec City. And they're also preparing all sorts of halal menus for those who are arriving. A lot of people are concerned about that, and they're like, look, they're coming here, they have to understand that it's a little bit different, and if we live in a secular state, why should we take our tax dollars and spend on such things if, on the other hand, we say that everything that is Catholic with our Catholic past cannot be in the public space? A lot of questions raised, and a lot of people don't understand why some religion of some minorities are more acceptable in the public place than the majority, the religion of the majority.
That's incredible. The fact that tax dollars are going to build a mosque at the Canadian Forces Base. I thought Quebec was very firm on the separation of church and state. It looks like we have a merger of mosque and state. I mean, this is very surprising to me. But, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau himself is from Quebec, as are many of his ministers. Is any of this being taken into account at the federal government? It sounds like the provincial government is more leery and the Quebec media are more open-minded, but what about Trudeau and the Liberals?
The Trudeau Liberals obviously have the multiculturalism tattooed. It's kind of part of their genes, if I could say so. So they've been campaigning openly in favor of the niqab, as you remember, during the last federal campaign. Surprisingly, it did hurt here, the NDP. Actually, it did sink the campaign, Thomas Mulcair's campaign in Quebec. They went from 59 seats to 16, and they dropped in the polls like over a very short period of time. But it seems that Quebecers were not really aware and focused and paying attention to the policies of the federal Liberals. And Justin Trudeau was able to win without being tested, if I could say so, by the population or the media. But now the reality is coming back. And Trudeau is going to face a lot of opposition here in Quebec on that specific issue. It's going to be a lot of, how could I say, it's not aware. People are not completely aware because we were not focusing on the Liberals over the last few weeks, federally speaking. The attention was all on the government and the opposition, and the Liberals just happened to go up and pop up in the polls in the last few days of the campaign, and we didn't see it coming. But now the test is coming up. And the federal Liberals are completely disconnected with the average Quebecer on that specific issue, and it's going to be a real test for Justin Trudeau. If it's his first test, but it might be the most difficult one. And the other thing also, Ezra, is that what happened on Friday the 13th of November 13th in Paris is also having much more impact in Quebec, as you can understand, because we have more links, obviously, with France and with Paris, probably, than the average person in English Canada. It's part of our roots. So the impact of the terrorist attacks also resonate much more with the Francophone voters right now in Canada.
Isn't that incredible? I know you're pressed for time, my friend. I'm very grateful to talk to you. I have one last question. I think about immigration, and I want to be an open-minded person. And there are many wonderful things about Canada being such a magnet for people from all over the world. But I don't think we're properly screening for culture and ideology. What I mean by that is there are many great Muslim and Arab liberals who are Democrats, who resist Sharia law, who want to be great Canadians. But I don't think we're discriminating based on who supports the separation of mosque and state. I would be skeptical, given what Justin Trudeau has said, that they would choose, I think that they would probably choose someone wearing a niqab over a liberal, secular Muslim family, and certainly over a Christian family. Do you think that we should start applying cultural or ideological or philosophical tests, like asking migrants from Syria, are you okay with the equality of men and women? Are you okay with the equality of gays and straights? Are you okay with the equality of all religions? Like having a bit of a test. I mean, people could lie, but it's at least you're letting people know in Canada it's not like Syria. What do you think of that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. This is the kind of policies that would resonate with the electoral, with Quebec voters right now. Actually, that's what the two opposition parties are proposing right now in the National Assembly. Those kind of tests to make sure that they come here and they have a common understanding of what's going on. They understand that the laws of the land are superior to any religious law, being the Quran or anything else. It's for us, it looks like very basic. But unfortunately, when you're in a mood of multiculturalism, it seems that you don't see those things the same way we do. And it's very disturbing. And I don't know how it's going to end up, how concretely it's gonna end up. But currently, this is the way there's a split, there's a completely split and a disconnect between what the federal government is doing and what the will of the population here in Quebec is. And I think in English Canada, a lot of you are think the same way Quebecers do. The only difference probably here is that we don't have the politically correctness of not being able to say it. Because Ezra, a lot of people are probably shy in English Canada because you guys are terrified of being called Islamophobe or racist. But unfortunately, this is not what we're talking about, actually. It's quite the opposite. We're talking about common values that unite us and make us proud of who we are as Canadians, as Quebecers, and that we shouldn't be ashamed to ask questions to fundamentalist religious, and actually what happened and all the terrorist attack happening and all those reasonable accommodations around should ring a few bells to some people and say, look, we shouldn't muzzle ourselves in name of political correctness before it's too late. We need to raise those questions now, and those who are intolerant actually and promoting intolerance are those who are trying to muzzle people and not having a democratic debate and an open and frank debate about those important issues that we will have to face more and more in the upcoming years.
Outstanding. Thank you so much, my friend. You are a great voice for liberty and equality before the law, and I hope we can keep in touch. Thanks for making the time for us. Stay with us, my friends. Some more after these words.
We've heard you loud and clear. You can't get enough Canadian conservative news and opinion. Why not check out our blog? It's all your favorite conservative bloggers together on a page called The Megaphone. Go to therebel.media/themegaphone or click on the Megaphone menu from our main page to check it out.
Welcome back to the Ezra Levant Show. One of my favorite guys is John Robson. By the way, he's Dr. John Robson, not a medical doctor, but he is a doctor. He's a PhD and he teaches history, and he does that on our channel, therebel.media. Well, now he's got a new project, and he joins me via Skype from Ottawa to tell us all about it. Dr. Robson, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me on the program.
Well, it's great to have you. You just finished a great documentary on Magna Carta. Give me a 1-minute recap of that, and then tell me what your next documentary project is.
Magna Carta is part of Canada's heritage of liberty. This nation was born free. It's why our national anthem describes it as the true north, strong and free. It is the cornerstone of our rights, the struggle to preserve citizens' liberties against aggressive governments, going back not just Confederation, not just to the Upper Canada, Lower Canada rebellions, but back to the British Glorious Revolution, back to Magna Carta and beyond. And if a country forgets its story, people forget who they are, they lose their way in the modern world. You look at Magna Carta, property rights is in there, security of the person, due process, women's rights, self-government, the right to resist excessive taxation. Our story must come from Magna Carta, or it doesn't come from anywhere, and we have no story.
Isn't that amazing? You know, the Liberals under Justin Trudeau keep saying, because it's 2015, they would like to erase any deep history and recreate Canada in their modern image, forgetting our roots. Well, you are doing something just as important now. You are reminding Canadians about our relationship and our rights regarding firearms. That's your next project. Tell me about that one.
Not just firearms, it's the right to protect yourself. This, too, is part of our story going back not merely to Confederation, not merely to the Upper Canada Rebellion, not just to the settlement of Canada, both by Europeans and by Aboriginals, but again, back to Magna Carta and beyond. At the end of Roman Britain, one of the first things that the Romanized Britons did after the legions left in the 5th century was repeal legislation against free people carrying weapons. They said it was a badge of servility. Obviously, there wasn't guns in those days, but it was simply the badge of a free man or free woman that they could protect themselves from wild animals, from criminals, from an aggressive state. And throughout our history, going all the way back and forward, almost to the present day, that has been a pronounced Canadian trait. I mean, you look at pictures of the great explorer, Samuel de Champlain. What's that at his side? It's a sword. You know, the great cartographer, David Thompson, what's he carrying? A rifle. Well, you look at the pictures of Aboriginals, they've got bows and arrows, they've got knives, and they understand how to use these things. They know they're dangerous, they're careful with them, but independent adults are able to have implements that are potentially dangerous because they are competent and sensible in how they make use of them. Those Indians with bows and arrows, they weren't always shooting each other over the dinner table. Canadians who carried muskets, who carried bows and arrows, who carried all kinds of weapons throughout the history of this country, used them responsibly. Whereas today, we're not just in a situation where the state is very leery of you having firearms. A woman cannot put pepper spray or a knife in her purse in case she is attacked on her way to the bus stop in an underground parking lot by some deranged stalker ex-boyfriend. You're not allowed to carry weapons of any sort for self-defense. The criminal code gives you some room, but the police and the courts don't. Even if you exercise your right of self-defense lawfully, like David Chen, that grocer in Toronto, Ian Thompson, homeowner in Port Colborne, the state will drag you through an incredibly lengthy, expensive, nerve-wracking process, leave you with a whole bunch of legal bills at the end, and not even an apology. Because
Isn't that the truth?
government
I've always found it
think we can
odd.
be trusted.
I've always found it odd how hard police and the law come down on women having pepper spray in their purse. I mean, why on earth would they do that? Let me ask you one last question before we give people the details on how they can support you. Some people say that the right to protect yourself is an American cowboy crazy idea, and that's not the Canadian way. Will you be addressing that modern fashion that, oh no, we're un-American up here, so guns and self-defense, that's just gross stuff from Hollywood?
Oh, absolutely. Remember, the American Revolution was fought by people claiming their traditional rights as Englishmen, and that includes the explicit right in the 1688 Bill of Rights to possess weapons. And under Edward I, II, and III, able-bodied men were required to practice with the longbow. And you look at the people who settled this country again, and I'm saying people, the Aboriginals and non-Aboriginals, they weren't wimps. They weren't people who needed the government to protect them if there was a skunk. These were people who knew how to take care of the things that needed to be taken care of, how to help each other, how to manage difficult situations and come out on top. The Canadian soldiers in both World Wars had grown up hunting. They had rifles in the house. And remember what George Orwell said, and Orwell's not an American, he's British, that the rifle on the wall of the laborer is an emblem of democracy, and we must make sure we keep it there.
Isn't that interesting?
That's the spirit of Canadian self-government.
John, I'm so excited that you're doing this. Really, I can't think of anyone else in Canada who has the right mix of command of history, you are a historian, command of the language, love for the issue, and you're getting into documentaries as you did with Magna Carta. How can our viewers help? I presume you're crowdfunding this like you did Magna Carta.
Absolutely. We're not going with government grants. We're not going with big broadcast entities under the thumb of the CRTC. We're asking Canadians to help us tell Canadian story. And the website you need to go to is arightoarms.com. That will take you to the Kickstarter site if you're comfortable contributing to the Kickstarter campaign, which is now at 88% of our minimum target, though we'd like to have more to make a longer documentary. You can also send us a check if you're not familiar or comfortable with Kickstarter. But you go to arightoarms.com, and the links from there will make it easy. And we appreciate contributions of any size. If as much, just $1, we will list you as a contributor unless you ask us not to in the credits. And you should see politicians' faces when they see how many people back this kind of project. If $5, $20, whatever you can afford, will help a Canadian story and keep it from getting erased.
Well, John, I'm going to make a contribution myself. I'm going to encourage our viewers to do so. You are a great conservative journalist who is embracing the medium of video, which we are trying to do here too. Great to see you. Give all our best to Brigitte, and we look forward to seeing the film.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Stay with us. More after the break.
So open-minded that the brains have fallen out.
What's the point that you're making?
The point that I'm making is that if you're going to propose a massive overhaul to the way the economy is developed in terms of carbon tax, cap and trade, other forms like that, it helps to have some science that is in fact settled.
Time for viewer feedback. Ann Patterson writes, I've been watching your show. It is so well done, very impressed. This covers the topics I'm interested in, especially the security threat of the migrant situation. Well, thank you very much for your friendly feedback. I've been thinking about what the right motto is for the Rebel, you know? I mean, at first we used fearless, as in we were not afraid to say politically incorrect things, to talk about subjects the media party ignores or buries. I like more and more the phrase, the other side of the story, because sometimes we're interested in exactly the same thing that the media party is, like right now the Paris Global Warming Summit or the migrant situation. So we're interested in the same subject, we just give you the other side of the story. Anyway, I'm trying that out as a bit of a slogan. Let me know what you think of it. Calvin Lagasse writes, the media cry about Harper's, quote, hidden agenda, but it's the NDP and Liberals that have a hidden agenda, love the show, and love the full episodes. Unlike some people, I want the entire show, not broken up into segments. Keep up the great work. Thanks for the friendly feedback. You're so right. I mean, let me give you the example of Alberta's NDP never breathing a word about a forced collectivization of farms. That just was not in their campaign plan. Or a multi-billion-dollar provincial carbon tax, really a new sales tax, basically a carbon GST. Talk about a hidden agenda. Harper, they're still waiting for him to reveal his hidden agenda. He's not even prime minister anymore. Justin Trudeau, I'm not sure if I'd call it a hidden agenda from him, because he basically said he either has no plan, or he'll do whatever he likes, or he'll run deficits, or he'll grow things. Like, he was so vacuous to begin with, and he was not held to account in the first place. I don't even think it was a hidden agenda from Trudeau. I think it was just he's going to do exactly what he wants without regard to any promises, because he probably made both opposing promises. I don't know. I think with Trudeau, it's more radicalism, and he's an empty vessel. With the Alberta NDP, it is a radical agenda. Brent Wahlberg writes, great show. I can see the incremental improvement from show to show. Keep this up, and the mainstream media will have to acknowledge the Rebel and all the great work you do. One suggestion I have is to do with mobile viewing. It would be great to see an official Rebel smartphone app. To take it even further, a member-only area of the app would be great for viewing your full TV-style shows. Something that would allow shows to be downloaded for later offline viewing would be awesome. I take your point. Like, let's say you're about to get on an airplane. So some airplanes these days have Wi-Fi, but a lot of them don't. If you could download the show on your phone when you're in a Wi-Fi area and watch it on the plane, that'd be great. We are just finalizing our plans for how we're going to, what we're going to do with this long show. Are we going to go with a company called Brightco? There's a company called Zype. We're figuring that out, and the app will come from there. I know this is technical talk for a lot of folks, but there are some folks who love their gadgets and smartphones and tablets and Rokus and Apple TVs. We've got some folks a lot smarter than me working on that. My thinking is, while we figure out that technical side, let's just do it. Let's just try it out. And as, we have lots of email people saying, break it up into little pieces, no keep it in full shows. We're just going to do it in the meantime and sort of figure it out as we go. And as some other writers have said, we're slowly ironing out any wrinkles in our systems too. So we're getting there. We're sort of building this news network in real time. An analogy I sometimes use is we're building the airplane as we're taxiing down the runway. Well, we're not even on the runway anymore. We are flying, and we're still building the airplane. Anyways, last email goes to Sam Getachew, who writes, can we regulate journalism in Canada so Ezra Levant, Sue-Ann Levy, and Tarek Fata will no longer be allowed to call themselves journalists? Now, this isn't just some nobody on Twitter. He sort of is, but Sam Getachew is this human rights award winner in Toronto. He writes for Huffington Post. He celebrated in the Toronto Star as this great Ethiopian community leader. And he's touted as this up-and-coming young guy. But he's clearly, he moved to Canada from Ethiopia when he was a teenager. He clearly doesn't understand Canadian values. Here he is calling for the regulation or the banning of journalists he doesn't like. In this case, 2 Jews, me and Sue-Ann Levy, and a liberal Muslim man, Tarek Fata. He has also, in another tweet, called for me to be deported. Sorry, Samuel, I was born in Canada. I have no other citizenship. I'm actually 4th generation Canadian. I can't be deported. But those are very illiberal things to say from someone who himself has immigrated to Canada from a failed state, really. Ethiopia is not as bad as, say, Somalia, but it is not a good place to live. We know that because Samuel Getachew himself moved here. This is what I mean when I'm worried about massive immigration from illiberal countries that don't share our Judeo-Christian values. There are wonderful Muslim and Sikh and Hindu immigrants to Canada who come from places that didn't have the Judeo-Christian Western traditions, but they embrace those. Some of the best liberal Democrats in the world are in the world's largest democracy India. So absolutely, you can be an outstanding Canadian and come from any place. In fact, some of my favorite Canadians come from totalitarian regimes, former Soviet Union, China. Some of the most passionate liberals, and I mean that in the best sense of the word, come from hellholes. But it troubles me greatly when someone like Samuel Getachew, who comes here from Ethiopia, wants to see some of the bad parts of Ethiopia with him. In this case, he wants to deport Jews he doesn't like and regulate journalists he doesn't like. That's why I'm afraid of Syrian migrants. I'm not afraid of immigration. I mean, Canada, especially in Toronto, some of the most wonderful parts of the city are the different communities, but they embrace Canadian values. Equality of men and women, separation of mosque and state, no religion or race has supremacy over the others. I'm worried that by bringing in 25,000 people from the most illiberal country in the world, Syria, that we're going to have a lot more Samuel Getachews and a lot fewer Tarek Faddis. That's our show for today. Hey, if you want to give me feedback, feel free. There's so many ways. You can tweet at me. You can join our Facebook page. You can just make a comment right there on the website. We've got a very lively comment section. That's it for today, and I hope you'll tune in tomorrow. I'm Ezra Levant, and you're watching The Rebel Media.